After letting Kamu inside, Sawan informs him that he saw his car on the night of Lim's murder. However, Kangmu mocks Sewon, saying that his brain sync might have messed him up. Suddenly, Sewon realizes that the dead body he synced with at first belonged to Kangmu. He hurries to the morgue to confirm his suspicion and gets shocked to find Kangmu's corpse. Confused, he questions himself for not seeing Kangmu's memories but witnessing him as a person. At last, he concludes that the experiment had some errors as it was his first attempt. Meanwhile, Jayan tries calling Sawan but can't connect to him and suspects he is feeding them with false information to derail the investigation. However, they do not have solid proof to arrest him. Suddenly, one of her colleagues points out Sawan's location and Xian follows the lead on their way. Jayan receives a call about Sawan heading towards Yongsan and requests backup. Elsewhere, Namil suddenly receives a call from Sewon in the middle of a presentation. He goes out to answer and Sewon asks him about the first subject they used for brain sync. Namil replies that he had chosen the corpse randomly, but Sewon still insists on meeting. Meanwhile, someone listens to their conversation through a recorder on their phone. In the next scene, Sewon asks Kangmu if he remembers anything about the accident, and the latter recalls that he was on his way to meet Lim. Following this, the duo drives to the crash site to investigate. Kangmu thinks he had slipped due to rain, but Sewon believes otherwise and they get off the road to examine. Just then, Sewon's ears start ringing and he gets a vision of the incident. There he sees Kangmu driving on a rainy night and two people following him. Soon the bad guys catch up to Kangmu and strike his car, causing him to get into an accident. This severely injures Kangmu, but he is still alive. Meanwhile, the same killers who had stabbed Lim approach Kangmu and ask about his intentions behind Ji. However, before Kangmu can speak or do anything, they smash his head with a rock. After the story, Sewon reveals to Kangmu that the killers were behind Lim, so they killed everyone in their way. Elsewhere, a nervous-looking Name packs all his belongings and hurries out the door. Suddenly, one of his colleagues, Eugene, asked if he had witnessed Sewon behave strangely. However, Nimil doesn't answer much and simply hurries to his car and drives away. Meanwhile, Sewon and Kangmu arrive at a restaurant in a mall. Sewon tries calling the meal, but the latter's phone is switched off. Suddenly, he sees one of the killers sitting alone and approaches him. Unfortunately, the other killer arrives and they whisk Sewon. Jae-yoon also arrives at the location. While the killers are walking with Sewon, they keep threatening him on the way, while Kangmu warns him to run or else he might die. Suddenly, Sewon sees a group of people getting in for a movie and creates a stir to run away. However, the killers corner him in a secluded area and one guy pulls out a knife. He rushes towards Sewon, but the latter manages to deflect the hit by using his cat abilities. Seeing this, the other guy shoots, but Sewon again manages to save himself. While Jayan hears the gunshot, after this, Sewon escapes from the place, but the killers follow him. Fortunately, the officers arrive there and Jayan shoots one of the killers. But before she can take down the other one, he manages to escape. In the next scene, Sewon desperately tries to extract information from the first killer but fails to do so. A while later, paramedics arrive and take care of the guy. While Jayan questions Sewon about them instead of clearing her doubts, Sewon tells her that he needs to perform a brain sync on the guy so that he can find his son. However, Jian disagrees and takes him to the station. Sewon explains the brain sync on the way and reveals the two guys were Kangmu's killers. He also talked with Kangmu, but since the officers can't see him, they believe that Sewon needs help. When Sewon again requests for a brain sync, Jayan asks him to prove himself by taking a lie detector test. They take Sewon for a polygraph study where Officer Dong Jung Kim begins his procedure. He asks several questions about Lim Pangmu and Yi, which Sewon answers correctly. But when the questions divert towards Jae and Lim's relationship, he refuses to answer. Sewon then urges Jae-yoon to let him do the brain sync as it can help him find Hijin. However, she disagrees and the officers take him away. On the other hand, Namil sneaks up to his house and climbs through a window, scaring his mother. She worries about her son's condition, while Namil has to borrow her car and a credit card. At the police station, Jeon watches a family reunite and thinks about Sewon's words. Later, she goes up to him and asks about his motives behind finding Hijin. Sewon replies that he is desperately trying to find the little girl as she knows about Do-yoon's whereabouts. This finally convinces Jae-yoon and she takes him to the morgue, where they take out the killer's corpse for the brain sync. Soon Seon gets ready, turns the device on and sees the killer receive a call from his girlfriend Mina. He informs Mina that he will be out the whole day for a job. Later, his boss gives him pictures of Lemon Moo so that he can kill them. Soon the two killers follow Kangmu and crash his car. They get out of their vehicle and approach an injured Kangmu before finally killing him. Later the other killer stabs Lim, as the first one goes out to start the car while they drive away. Hee-jin watches them from her bedroom window. The two killers then meet a stranger and inform him about their successful killings. As he walks away, the stranger tells them about Hee-jin, who draws everything she sees and orders them to take care of her. In the next scene, the two guys abduct Hee-jin from her grandma's house. They then bury the dead bodies in a secluded place, but the killer can't eliminate Hee-jin as he thinks she's just a kid. He then calls Mina and asks her to take care of the little girl for a few days. She agrees reluctantly and gives a 48-hour window to her boyfriend. Back in the present, after Sewon informs Jae-yoon that Hee-jin is still alive, they hurry to save the girl. Sewon uses the killer's memories and guides the detective to Mina's place. Soon they meet her in a shady-looking place and began questioning her. They asked her about Hee-jin, and Mina reveals that the girl ran away into the nearby woods a few days earlier. In no time, a rescue team starts searching for the girl in the woods along with Sewon and Jae-yoon. Suddenly Sewon stops before a tree and climbs up effortlessly as the others watch him in shock. He then uses his cat skills to hear a rustle in the jungle. They all run towards the source, but Sewon volunteers to go alone after a point. There he finally finds Hee-jin and comes out carrying her in his arms. The following day at the hospital, Jin tries talking to Hee-jin, but the girl remains quiet. Sewon then mentions that he is Daeun's father and tries to initiate a conversation, but the girl is too scared to speak. Hence he hands her some drawing supplies and asks her to draw where she last saw Daeun. Soon she sketches a butterfly and Daeun standing with someone, as Sewon watches in shock. Sewon asks the girl about the location and the stranger, but once again she remains silent. As a result, he takes the drawing and leaves. He shows the picture to Jae-yoon and tells her that Daeun is a lie, as the image has some fallen leaves, but the fire that allegedly killed his son occurred in summer. Despite all the evidence, Jae-yoon does not believe him. She refuses to reopen Daeun's case and tells him that the police must go after real suspects. Jae-yoon also warns Sewon to not do anything alone. Later she drives him home and informs him that the police will keep an eye on him. Before exiting the car, Sewon asks Jae-yoon to find its colleague Namel. Meanwhile, the stranger talks about Namel with the killer, and the latter assures him that he will take care of the doctor. The stranger then hands him an envelope and walks away. Elsewhere, Jae-yoon returns to the mall to investigate and sees the killer running away. Through the security footage, alarmed, she tells her colleague to go to the lab to learn about Namel. On the other hand, Sewon tells Ji that their child is still alive and questions her on how she knew about it. Kang-moo suddenly appears and tells him that Sewon has hit a corner in the investigation and he needs to start over. He suggests Sewon go back to the cabin and look for clues. At the police station, some witnesses help sketch the second killer and Jae-yoon orders her juniors to find him. Meanwhile, at the lab, an inspector questions Yoojin about Namel's whereabouts, but she replies that he has been missing for some days. Elsewhere, Sewon reaches the demolished cabin and gets a vision of Jae-yi breeding Lim and his daughter. He gets inside and sees the kids play happily on a swing. Lim asks Yi if Sewon is happy with them being together in the cabin, to which she replies that her husband is more focused on work than them. She has heard that Sewon makes no effort to understand her. Sewon realizes that Jae-yi and Do-yoon look like a happy family with Lim and Hee-jin. Suddenly, Sewon has some visions of the fire flash through his memories. Sewon then lights up some woods and sees Do-yoon sleeping in his bed. He also sees a glimpse of someone lighting up a fire before the cabin blows. As he enters the cabin, he sees the killer approaching Do-yoon and knocking him unconscious with chloroform. Meanwhile, his partner comes in with a fake body and lays it on Do-yoon's bed. The two then take the Yoon away by lighting the cabin on fire. Seeing this, Yi becomes devastated as she assumes her son has died. Back in the present, Sewon goes up to the graveyard with a shovel and remembers the funeral and Ji crying uncontrollably. He records him digging as proof, and after opening the coffin, he takes a DNA sample from the body. A while later, he returns home and tests the DNA sample. As expected, the sample doesn't belong to Do-yoon. Meanwhile, the killer, who was sent to eliminate an Emil, goes to his house posing as a friend. Wasting no time, he knocks into Mil's mother unconscious and begins going through her phone to find clues. On the other hand, the previous stranger sneaks inside Sewon's apartment and pulls off Yi's oxygen supply. As he is about to leave, he receives a warning from a certain Dr. M to leave immediately without leaving any evidence. As a result, he runs to the basement and reconnects the pipe before leaving. Elsewhere, Officer Ji-yoon receives a call from her colleague who informs her that Nemel's recent search history included ways to run away. Hearing this, Jen makes up a plan to meet at his mother's house for clues. Once they reach, the officers ring the doorbell but no one answers. However, they see a shadow move inside. When they keep on knocking, the beaten-up old woman opens the door. She acts as if nothing has happened, but turns out that the killer is holding a knife against her behind the door. She answers that she hasn't seen her son, but the officers suspect something is wrong and signal her to step aside. Wasting no time, Jae-eun barges in through the door, but unfortunately the killer gets away with the meal's location. Later, the paramedics take Nameless' mother to the hospital and Jae-eun learns about Nameless' place. The following day, Sewon regrets not being there for Jae-yi when she needed him the most and apologizes to her. He also starts revealing the recent progress of the case to Ji. Just then he sees the kid that the killers left on Do-yoon's bed. He also notices some stitches on the kid's head and realizes that he might have been autistic. This makes him suspect that the boy was also treated at the same clinic where his son Dayan was. In order to find answers, Sewon reaches the children's clinic and asks to meet with Do-yoon's primary doctor. While waiting for the doctor, Sewon sees a butterfly on the glass pane which looks similar to what Jin drew earlier. He sees Dr. Hyun take Do-yoon somewhere through Hijin's memories. A while later, he walks into the doctor's room while she quickly hides something below her desk. When Sewon asks to see his son's medical records, Dr. Hyun pretends to search for the file, but in fact she texts Dr. M about Sewon's presence. Suddenly, Sewon notices a ticking clock and feels restless. Dr. Hyun makes up an excuse and leaves the room. As she leaves, Sewon sees her face distorted for a flash of a second. Meanwhile, Dr. Hyun calls Dr. M and assures him that she will take care of the situation. Elsewhere, Sewon frantically searches for Do-yoon's records on her computer. However, the computer displays no history of any patient with Do-yoon's name. Upon further research, Sewon finds a hidden photo frame and recognizes the doctor from his childhood. The episode ends as Dr. Hyun returns with some other people to apprehend Sewon. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on the notifications. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day ahead.